I tell every founder, marketeer, growth, or product expert basically the same thing. Focus on your target audience first. Be extremely clear on who you're building for. Well, the follow-up question is obvious. How should we define our target audience? How do we draw a fence around the people we seek to serve? I'm very happy to have met David Allison, founder of Valuegraphics.com, through our mutual agreement that demographics aren't the way. Demographic segmenting leads to ineffective marketing in the best case and harmful discrimination in the worst. David and his team found a way for companies to increase their marketing efficiency from 10% to 80%. And as a happy byproduct, this method helps you create products that truly makes a difference in your customers' lives. How? By focusing on values. Values are the connective tissue between one person and another. Values are the human operating system, the driving force behind everything we do, and the only accurate predictor of what we'll do next. I hope you'll enjoy this talk with David as much as I did.
So my name is David Allison, and I'm the founder of sometimes I don't know how to talk about it because it's the Valuegraphics Project is the name we have for all kinds of different things we're doing, including the Valuegraphics Research Company, the Valuegraphics Database, Valuegraphics Publishing Company, all kinds of other things, but it all sort of falls under the umbrella of Valuegraphics. And what we're doing is offering the world a different way of looking at people. Because right now, what we use to understand people, look at people, are demographics, and we'll get into why those are not helping us out, and psychographics, which have some use, but also are quite limited. So we need a third one, and it's called Valuegraphics, and we have invented it, and here it is, and we're talking about it today.
Cool. Yeah. For me, I think we met because I've been thinking a lot about values. I've been thinking a lot about how to identify a target audience. So I've been talking all the time. I tell startups, you need to focus on a niche target audience. You need to understand who are you building for. And then they go, great, Elsa, we're happy to do that. How would you recommend we build a fence around our audience? You know, like how do we actually identify that audience? And then my first instinct was, okay, demographics probably no. Because I've worked with them before and always felt,
instinct. Yeah,
it's an instinct. It has been an instinct for a long time, actually, for about 10 years. I always felt like this feels extremely random what we're doing here. We were setting up Facebook campaigns, so you're kind of forced to do it, right? You have to indicate salary ranges and age and gender, and it felt very random, right? So I always felt like this can't really be it. And especially I speak to a lot of early stage companies. And in that case, I think demographics are even more random, right? Because you have no learnings about who will actually flock to what you're saying.
Yes.
So I was thinking about, okay, what do I tell them, right? Because I tell them you need to narrow down your target audience, and then I should give them tools how. And I came across a value plotting exercise by Seth Godin, which I liked a lot, which is very much saying, okay, we'll really message and also build based on values and see who comes to that. And then you and I got in touch because I started blabbering about values and we realized we have something in common.
So yeah, that's how we found each other. And it is all about values. Your instincts were correct. Let's you said a couple of things there. I'll start with how demographics are kind of random. So our work at the Valuegraphics Research Company and the Valuegraphics Database has been about proving that. And so we've done 750,000 long-form qual-quant surveys around the world now, across 180 countries, kind of break the world into 9 regions. And we've built a random stratified statistically representative sample of the population of planet Earth. And it's accurate for those 180 countries to a plus or minus 3.5%, 95% level of confidence. And what we've measured is what everyone's core values are, as well as their wants and needs and expectations. So values, wants, needs, expectations, we refer to it sometimes as VWNE. And basically what we've done is figure out who people really are on the inside, not who they are on the outside. However, the way we collected the data, we're able to dice and slice that data set. It's like our own little Lego model of the world. And we can do it by demographics. So let's kill demographics off. My new book is called The Death of Demographics. Let's kill them right now. If you look at any if you look at any demographic cohort in the world, and this holds true for countries, for regions, for the world itself, we'll talk about it at the world level. Any demographic cohort, we're all familiar with those labels: gender, income, marital status, number of kids, education, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The people within any one of those cohorts, in order to be targetable, they have to be similar somehow. So how similar are the people within those demographic cohorts? If you line them all up side by side and average it out, they're on average 10.5% similar to each other. So that means if you target a group of people based on what you think you know about them demographically, you only got about a 10% chance that it's going to work. It has a 90% fail built right in by using demographics to try and understand who people are. Now, that said, demographics are still a really good way to put a fence around people because, you know, I always reach for my reading glasses. These are not going to sell to 17-year-old women who make $50,000. I don't even need to go any further than that. These are not going to sell to 17-year-old women. But just because you're able to demographically put a fence around a group of people doesn't mean you know who they are. You just know what they are. And that's been the problem. We've been using demographics to try and understand who people are. And that's why we get these, random stereotypes about, boomers are terrible with technology and Gen Z really wants to be connected to each other more than any other generation before. And women, well, they're like this and men are like that. And it's nonsense. The people in those labels are only 10% similar. So we saw this and we said, let's build a better way. Let's build a way to use that data to understand who people are on the inside instead of the outside and how they're going to make their next decision. Because that's what we're trying to do, is influence, engage, motivate people, connect with people based on how they're going to decide to do the next thing they're going to do. Because we're all in that business, right? Buy my app, subscribe to my SaaS platform, do whatever it is we're trying to do in a tech space. And any founder is listening, you're trying to convince some people to do the next thing. And so to understand that, you need to know their values, because human brains only know how to make any decision based on comparing the options back against their values. It's the only operating system we have. It's part of your brain. It's a neurological fact. So understanding values helps you understand who people are, how they're going to make their next decision. And that's what we're all trying to do.
And I like what you said in the book you write about the three-legged stool. And that helps me a lot because, of course, you call it the death of demographics, but it's not, you don't kill it off entirely, because that might be a bit shocking. You still kind of use it where it makes sense, right? So it's like, as you said, I'm not going to try to sell tampons to a guy. There are some things that you can clearly set a limit, but you don't use demographics for things that it really cannot be a predictor of, right? So there's this big hole, what you also call the last mile, this big gap where demographics don't help you predict anything, and their values can, so you have demographic goes one part, psychographics goes another, but value graphics can cover that whole big hole that you kind of have left. So I quite like
the three-legged stool is a really good way to talk about this. It's a good construct. So, a three-legged stool is a really sturdy thing to stand on. That's why milking stools have three legs and not two. Or I guess, back in history, there were one-legged milking stools. Anyway, we're going to stick with the three-legged milking stool. We have demographics to help you put a fence around a group of people. And the shortest way to think about demographics is they're descriptive. Let's describe a group of people. And then we have this whole other category of stuff that we haven't touched on yet, which is psychographics. And psychographics is everything that people have done so far. What they've felt, what they've clicked on, how they've purchased things in the past, whether they liked it or didn't like it, any of that stuff. All the other data that isn't demographics is psychographic. Because if we know it, if we wrote it down, then it's over. Even if it happened a second ago, 2 seconds ago, it's historical. So we have historical information that helps us see patterns in the noise, which is cool. If somebody's purchased a thing once a month for their whole life, chances are they're going to keep purchasing a thing once a month for the rest of their lives. Demographics describe, psychographics are historical. So we got descriptive, we got historical. But what we're trying to do is figure out how to be predictive. How do we understand what's going to happen next? So with that third leg of the stool, value graphics, now we have descriptive, historical, and predictive insights on an audience. And now you got a sturdy thing to stand on when you start to approach what I call, and many researchers refer to as the last mile, that, you pile up all the insights you possibly can. And then at some point, a human brain still has to go, okay, well, we're going to do this. There's still that leap of faith, that decision that you have to make, that last mile about integrating all that information. So I'd like to say that what we've done is take the traditional last mile that's based on demographics and psychographics alone, and by adding the third leg of the three-legged stool, Valuegraphics, we've made the last mile into maybe the last 100 yards, because now you know which direction to jump. If everybody in your target audience is incredibly focused on and driven by and makes all their decisions based on, let's say, personal growth, that they're intent every day on finding ways to be better and better and better. Well, now you know for that last leap you have to make, the last 100 yards, that you have to go in that direction. Whatever you do, you have to connect the dots between your product, service, brand, app, and personal growth, because that will be magnetic for your target audience. I don't really care if they're black or white or green or purple or male or female or young or old or rich or poor. If they all have personal growth and you have a way of satisfying personal growth for people, then why not have a broad audience that cuts across all of those different demographics, instead of saying, no, my demographic is just this one. I only want people from this slice. Because here's the thing, I'm rambling right now, so you're gonna have to interrupt me if you want me to shut up and get another question. But if we predetermine that our target audience is, like, let's say Gen Z, the same thing is going to happen. The only Gen Z folks who are going to be interested in your product, service, or brand are the ones who have personal growth. So all you're doing is saying, I want to choose my personal growth decision makers from a very small swimming pool, a little wading pool, a little bird bath in the backyard. Instead of saying, I don't care how big the pool is. What I care about is, let's find the people who want personal growth. And that cuts across all those demographics.
Yeah, I find that super interesting. So I've been, firstly, whenever I talk about target audiences and limiting the target audience and understanding your target audience, people say, oh, are you in marketing? You sound like somebody who's in marketing. And I'm not, actually. I build products. I'm a product lead. But to me, I need to understand a target audience in order to be able to build a product that fits them, right? So to me, these things are completely intertwined. And that's why I think also your Valuegraphics thinking allows us to build products that are better for people in the end. Because I think you and I are also similar in the sense that we're doing a job and not feeling quite right about it, because you feel like something is slightly off. You're in an industry and you feel, I'm doing this thing, I'm doing quite well, but it doesn't feel quite right. And I have the same sort of, I've been in tech, startups and scale-ups for a long time. And I feel like a lot of the things that are being created are just digital trash in a sense, are just being built because founders or people really felt like building that thing. And it's not really solving anything for anyone or doing anything for anyone.
The world has enough things that nobody loves. So let's build some stuff that people really care about deep inside their heart.
And that really make their lives slightly better, right? I'm not saying we're going to make the world a better place and we're going to create all this value and it's going to be, we can do that too. But there's so much space in the middle, right? To just do things that are still kind of good for someone, make somebody happy, right? That you also feel confident selling it to them because you think, this is actually going to make your day better, right? If you buy this thing, I'm completely confident about that. And that's something that is really dear to my heart, because I know a lot of people, and I've been there myself, that you're building a product or you're selling a product and you think, I feel kind of like a fraud because this isn't really making somebody's better. And I feel like the Valuegraphics way of thinking for me feeds into that very well, because it's not about just targeting people, but creating something that's good for them.
The best piece of advice I give to anybody is to stop thinking about customers, prospects, clients, funders, donors, investors, media, community. Stop it and just think about them as humans, because they're all just humans. And no matter what it is they're doing, they're chasing their values. I have a good story. Can I tell you a little story? This really helps everybody get their head around this. So, you've this has happened to all of us. You've been away, vacation or a conference or a trip or something, and you meet somebody and you talk for a few minutes, and for whatever reason, it usually helps if there's a glass of wine involved, but it doesn't have to. There's about 10 minutes, 15 minutes in, and you look at each other and you're finishing each other's sentences, and one of you says it, one of you says it. One of you says, yeah, I feel like I've known you my whole life. And you clicked. You just found that, you're like, what? This is crazy. How is this possible? And so you go off and you do crazy things together. One of you says, let's go bungee jumping. And you go, okay, let's do it. And because you know exactly how to get that person to say yes to what. And then the next morning, you're at the breakfast table and they're sad. And they had a bad phone call last night from home. Something not good has happened. And you'd know exactly what you needed to say to get them to feel okay, to help them through that bad time. What's happening here is you found what we call a fast friend. Now, a fast friend is someone who sees the world in the same way you do. That's why you can finish each other's sentences. It's why you can talk each other into going bungee jumping. It's why you can comfort each other when that's required. Your values are the same as theirs. You've stumbled across someone who has the same outlook on life. Your values match. You found a fast friend. Now imagine if you could have fast friends at scale. If that's how well you knew your customers, your clients, your employees, if you could talk to them because you understood what was in their heart, and you could have that kind of fast friend relationship, well, then the entire life cycle of being a founder is different now. Now you've attracted people based on they're seeing the world in the same way that you do. Now you're getting up every morning and you're working for your friends, and your friends are helping you. And the whole decision cycle, everything you have to do, you can treat people like humans, like fast friends. It's a game changer when you start thinking about people this way and stop thinking about them in the old-fashioned ways that we've been thinking about people for millennia, frankly.
I'm trying to, in my product processes, build in moments of thinking, do I think this is okay, right? For example, if you're building a product and you use notifications, triggers, where you ping people saying, okay, come back to our app, or I have a discount for you, or whatever. I think that's a very clear example of where you have to have a moment, collect yourself and think of, okay, this is a human, I'm interrupting their day. Is that okay for me to do that right now, right? Like, am I really offering them something that they should want? You know, it's like a friend. Is this a moment that you would interrupt them from their work and say, look, this banana is now 50 cents, right? Is that something you would do? It's just like thinking again as human, just bring some empathy into the process again. And I think that's just so much value. And in turn, you have the data to back that up. It will help your business as well. It's not like being authentic and connecting on a human level and treating humans with respect and dignity means your business is going to fail. It's quite the opposite, actually. That's the beautiful side effect. Yeah.
Let's talk about some data, because that's kind of fun. So I mentioned already that if you look at anybody in a demographic cohort that around the world, you got about a 10% chance of actually getting them to say yes or be engaged or pay attention to you. So that's cool. And it's not cool, actually, it's as we said, a 90% fail. And if we look at the entire population of planet Earth with more accuracy than you need for a PhD from Harvard, the entire population, how often does the whole world agree on things? So we're going to compare demographic similarity, demographic cohort cohesion to just everybody who's awake and breathing today. People who are awake and breathing anywhere on Earth today, they agree with each other about 8% of the time. So there's only a 2% advantage to looking at the world with a demographic lens on. Only 2%. That's nothing. Now our data is plus or minus 3.5%. So you could argue it's basically a wash. It's just as accurate to say, I'm going to target a demographic as it is to say, I'm going to just do whatever the hell I want and I don't care what anybody thinks. You're going to get about the same response rate. Now, here's some fun things to kind of back up that way of thinking about things. If we send out an email, a direct email, and we get about a 3% response rate, what do? We pop the champagne corks. 3%. That's amazing, we think to ourselves. That's a great open rate, and a click-through rate of like 1.5%, 2%. We're like, over the moon. That's fantastic. Ladies and gentlemen, that's a 97% fail, and we're celebrating.
Yes.
It's a 97% fail because the best you could do in ideal circumstances is 10%. And that 10% is only if you do everything perfect, which you won't because you're human and you're guessing at stuff. So getting a 3, 4, I mean, you're getting close to 50% of the total accessible market in that case of being of 10%, right? Now, if we put people in a group based on values and say, let's put people in a group, for example, one of the archetypes that appears in our global data set are people who we used to call them workaholics, my previous book. And then my friends who fit into this archetype got all mad at me and said, don't call us that. It sounds like there's something wrong with it. And there is nothing wrong with it. I love it. I love my job. I wish I could work more hours every day. So, okay, we won't call you workaholics. So we just call them the workers. So these are folks who live for their career for all kinds of different reasons. It breaks down into all the billions of different ways that humans behave in a certain way for a certain reason. But if that one thing is present, if they are devoted to that extent to their jobs, then all their values, everything we know about them lines up to about in the 80th percentile. So targeting that group of people based on what we know about them, you get about an 80% ROI instead of a 10% ROI. And what have you done differently? You've just changed the way you look at people. You didn't have to build a new factory. You didn't have to, go and spend a bunch of money retooling everything. You just had to change the way you look at people, and you go from a potential of 10% to a potential of 80%. And even if that 80% is half wrong and you only get 40%, or it's 3/4 wrong, you only get 20%, it's still twice as good as you're going to get at the outside if you just continue to use the old-fashioned ways of looking at folks that we've used for far too long.
And now to make it actionable, because I think this is super convincing. I'm like, yes, let's do that, right? Now, let's say I'm an early stage startup. Let's make it a B2B startup. I talk to a lot of B2B SaaS companies, which I think is similar, as you said, humans deciding, right? Maybe humans with different things to lose, but nonetheless humans. Let's say they might have an early product. Would you just say, okay, go out with a value proposition that doesn't talk about demographics at all and just has very strong values in it and kind of see who comes in? Or do you analyze the customer base? How?
Ideally, yes. So to begin with, yes. I mean, we talk with so many organizations who've got it in their head already that their target audience is demographically, let's just say it's millennials. Yeah. We go, okay, well, how do you know there isn't anybody else? They're like, no, we're just millennials. We know millennials because we looked at our CRM, and our CRM are our competitors, or they whatever. They got some kind of evidence that they think it's all millennials. We go out and we do our study for them and bring the data back and say, okay.
So how do you do that study? It's just for the people here?
We have a very specific methodology. We go out and we find a particular group of people. So let's say these are platinum reading glasses and they're made for men because they've got a really wide head. I got a head the size of a pumpkin. They're expensive and they're made by, Cartier. They're not, and they're not expensive and they're not made out of platinum, but let's just say, so we would come back and say, okay, we found a group of people. We have to go out and do a little piece of primary research. We find enough people, a little stat rep. So it's usually around 1350 to 1850 people. And we ask them a couple questions about themselves. And they've said, yeah, those sound like the most amazing reading glasses I've ever seen in my life. I can't wait to get my hands on a pair. And we bring back, for whatever geography we're talking about here, we bring that data back and we use that as a way to go into the benchmark study and extrapolate a rich data profile from those 750,000 surveys we've already done. So what those people are telling us is what kind of humans have decided that that's a great product or service or brand. Because remember, the only way we can make those decisions is based on our values. So something about that product has attracted a group of people with similar values. We ask them just enough questions that we go, okay, we got it. And we find a typing tool. And then that lets us go into the benchmark study and extrapolate all the rich data we've already collected from everybody else who are just like them. So we can come back to the client and go, okay, well, you thought it was only baby boomers who make $100,000 a year who are interested in those? Well, yeah, they're there, but also There's some Gen Z tech millionaires who also want to buy your super expensive reading glasses. And there's some women who have wide heads who also want to wear them because they're tired of their glasses being too tight across their head. I'm making stuff up on the fly here. And there's also people, so you find out that, we say, instead of choosing a slice out of the loaf of bread and saying, I only want this slice and I only want this slice, why not slice the loaf this way and find the thing that connects people around their values across all demographic categories? And when you do that, oftentimes you find out that loaf of bread is actually a baguette. It's far bigger than you thought it was. And you're going to say no to their money if somebody outside of your little demographic slice shows up and says, perfect, exactly, I want your product, here's my money. You're going to go, no, sorry, you're not a millennial and we only want to look after millennials. Of course not. You're going to take their money. So why not just go chase them in the first place? So that's the first way you can make this practical, is you can hire us and we can do that for you. It's not the most expensive research in the world because we've already done all the work building the benchmark study. But for a founder of a early stage startup, we're in 5 figures. We're in the 5-figure range. Let's just say that. However, there's other things you can do. My new book, The Death of Demographics, you can get that on Amazon. And in there's a quiz. It's a 15-question quiz. This isn't as accurate as a piece of custom research, but if you take that 15-question quiz and send it out to however many people you can with SurveyMonkey or whatever tool you're using to put things out in the world, take the responses, and there's an answer key in the book, and it'll tell you which of 15 chapters in the book you need to be paying attention to. Which one of those archetypes is most similar to your target audience? Now think about this for a moment. We've taken the population of the world and broken it into 15 archetypes. Those are pretty broad groups, right? I mean, the whole planet fits into 15. In fact, there's a bazillion little tiny subsegments that we can identify when we do custom work, but 15 is going to at least point you in the right direction. I like to say you're playing the valuegraphic piano and you might be playing it with your fists. It's not going to be really pretty, but at least you're on the right musical instrument and not playing the broken demographic cello over in the corner that doesn't have any strings on it anymore and doesn't work. So the quiz, and then each of those chapters gives you everything we know about that archetype, what their values are, how you can talk to them, where they're more prevalent in which parts of the world, all that kind of stuff. So for the cost of a book, you can get started. But as they say in the marketing world, but there's more. Here's the free way. There's a free way, and then there's a way I'm going to tell you that I've never told anyone before, where I actually will do something for you in exchange for doing something for me. So first off, the free way. Here's 3 questions. You can ask anybody you want these 3 questions. And the more people you ask, the better, because this is a qualitative set of questions now. And what you're listening for is patterns in the responses. Everyone's going to answer these questions in a slightly different way. You got to be listening really carefully and go, oh, I hear what they're actually talking about this. And you'll start to be able to clump the responses that you get. So depending on what you're doing, you ask these questions yourself, or if you've got a frontline sales team, for example, get them to, you can rephrase these in a way so it sounds like it's your own language. I often will tell retailers, just to be really silly, to train all the people working in the store to just kind of weave these into the conversation while you're wrapping things up and go, hey, I was at a party last night and somebody had just like as many responses as you can get, however you can get them. Question number 1, why do you go to work? People will tell you, oh, it's for my family, got to pay my bills. I love my work. It's my creative outlet. They're going to tell you stuff and you want to try and clump those and listen for the patterns in the noise. Those are their values coming to the surface. People are saying it's because it's my creative outlet. That's creativity. It's because I need to put my kid through school. That's a little bit of education and family coming through, right? Okay, second question. You just won the lottery. Why would you give away half of it? Not who would you give it to, which is what everybody will tell you
Would
first.
you give away half of it?
No. Why would you give away half of it? You force them to say, why would you give away half? And you'll hear all kinds of other things that come out from people there. And then my favorite one, which is also a good question to ask your friends at the next dinner party you're at, where you've had a couple of glasses of wine, because you'll learn a lot about your friends, is to say, you get to write a letter to yourself from 10 years ago. What would you say to yourself from 10 years ago? And why those things? I don't actually really care what you choose to say to yourself. What I'm interested in is the why. Now you see the pattern here. Why would you go to work? Why would you give away half your lottery winnings? And why would you say those things to yourself from 10 years ago? It's Simon Sinek's why. Get to the why, right? Those whys are values. Values drive us. So use that as a way to start to kind of collect that data. It takes longer. It's not even as accurate as the 15-question quiz, but it's a great way to kind of start seeing patterns. And I promise you, if any founder listening today, working on a SaaS app, talks to 25 people and asks them those 3 questions, they will hear some similar answers. And that's the proof that values are connecting the dots between the people that you're trying to influence, right? So it's a great way to just kind of test it and go, I don't know if I believe this stuff. Ask those questions, you're going to hear some stuff that'll make you believe that stuff. You want fast and accurate, you got to pay my company and we'll give you fast and accurate. You want a little less fast and a little less accurate, use the quiz. This is the kind of just getting your headspace into it kind of ways to use those 3 questions. But I have an even better one. I've never done this before, and I don't know why you made me decide that I was going to do this for the first time. So here's the offer to everybody who's listening today. My new book, compared to my old book, is very much about the global data set. We have a very big footprint, and I do a lot of public speaking in North America about the data we know is true for Canada and the United States and Mexico and other parts of the North American continent. But this year, I'm trying very hard to do a bunch of work in places other than North America. I want to speak to people all over the world so that we're able to help everyone with this information on how to look at people. So anybody listening today, if you're on a committee or a board or you know someone and you can get me a speaking gig anywhere other than North America, and I can trace it back to you, you need to let me know. It's like, I just put your name on the committee list and they're going to choose their keynote speaker for next year's conference in Berlin or whatever it is. In exchange, as my way of saying thank you, I will do a free Valuegraphics profiling for your organization, which starting prices on that are, as I said, in the 5 figures. So I'll do that for you as my thank you for free if you get me a speaking gig. And that holds for anybody who's listening today.
That's so cool. That's really cool. Thank you. Thank you so much.